that might have messed some people up. So sorry about that. I didn't realize that it was going to go that long. It said till 12:30, but really it was till 1. So that's what happened there. Every day is Friday this week. I feel like every day is Monday. So good for you that you feel like every day is Friday. That's what we like to hear. That's awesome. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the collaborative classroom, and I have some things that I have learned just by designing an online course. So I had to figure out how to make something that was collaborative online. And so I just want to share with you kind of what my thoughts are and some things that I've used. Is it perfect? No. Has it worked for students to go through this? Yeah, it has. Definitely not ideal, but that's where we are right now. We're not in the ideal place, but we'll do what we can with it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then at the end, I'm going to go ahead and put us into content groups if we have enough. If we just have the 9 of us, we'll just chat online, and you can ask any questions that you have. So I'm going to go ahead and share. Hey, Judy. Oops, that's not what I want to do. Okay. All right. Sorry, I was looking through it before. Here we go. And I'll do my best to kind of monitor what's happening, but I'm probably not great at it. So if you have a question, go ahead and unmute your mic and just ask it, because I probably won't see your hand up. I'm getting better at that, but not great. Let me put you in gallery mode so that I can see better. Okay, there we go. All right, so virtual collaborative math classroom. That's something we never thought could happen, and something that seems counterintuitive, but it is possible. That bit.ly link at the bottom, the bit.ly, that is going to be sort of a follow along, and when I reference something, it should be on that. You're welcome to type that in now, but you really don't have to. You can just access it later. And a recording from this webinar will also be on that bit.ly. So if you want to go back and take a look at that. Okay, so we're going to try the annotation tool here. Mark where you are, or type the coordinate in the chat, so that way you could do either one of those. And then to the right is more comfort, and up is more comfort, and to the left is less, and down is less. So to do that, you click on the options, I think, next to where it says Tracy Jackson is sharing her screen, and then click the annotate button. But otherwise, you can just type in the chat. Nice. Some squiggles there. Oh, the heart. So the stamp tool also works. Is that a cup of coffee? I could use that cup of coffee. Oh, nice. Even a name. The arrow button puts your name on there too. I think if you put the arrow button. Nice. There's connected hearts. Not sure about that. Maybe that's the hope. Maybe that's after this webinar. Okay, does anybody need more time? Can you kind of raise your hand if you need some more time? Because I can see all of you in here now. Okay, all right. So I'm going to go ahead. I think I can clear it from here. Clear all drawings. There we go. Okay. Okay, I'm getting faster. I'm still not super fast, but I'm getting faster. All right, so the ideal classroom we know looks like students as problem solvers, students collaborating, teachers facilitating, learning and summarizing, checks for understanding. That's all our ideal classroom that we see. And then we wonder, okay, so what's gonna happen in the virtual ideal classroom? Well, it turns out exactly the same. So that's our ideal, like what we want. Will it look like that at first? Probably not. But if we start to think about what kind of tools we want to use, don't get so wrapped up in the tools. Make sure they fit what the ideal classroom is. So virtual learning should look the same way as it does in our classroom. So it's overwhelming, I know. You are probably all totally, completely overwhelmed. I am overwhelmed. We see all of these cool tools to use. I caution you to get caught up on tools rather than really thinking about that ideal classroom. So right now, maybe pick one. So don't take frantic notes on this. You could always go back and look at this. I am always here. I'm gonna be here the rest of the year, right in this very chair actually. So I am always here if you have questions about it. Maybe just watch a little bit and see if you could take one that you could use to get us closer to the virtual ideal classroom. So right now we are definitely in a marathon. This is not a sprint, even though sometimes you feel like it is. So just one foot in front of the other, and now is the time to make mistakes. Everyone's gonna make mistakes. Everyone has a lot of grace right now. So it's important to try our things out now instead of waiting for 2 or 3 months, 2 months, and maybe not so much grace will be given to us. So now is a really good time to try things and make your mistakes while everyone is in kind of the same boat. So marathon, not a sprint. So ideal classroom, we're gonna look at this ideal classroom in a couple of different ways. One of the vehicles for collaboration, so this doesn't cause collaboration, but allows it to happen. So discussions is the first one, and I capitalized on that a lot in my online class, and the responses to discussion. HyperDocs is another really great way for students to collaborate. Desmos is phenomenal. If there is one thing that you could learn throughout this whole interesting time that we're in, it's using Desmos for so many things, but collaboration is also one of those things. And then Flipgrid. So remember, you don't have to do all of these things. They are just vehicles for collaboration. Discussions might be a really good place to start if you feel uncomfortable with the other ones. So looking at discussions, there was a whole webinar on how to create a MyConnect discussion, and I included it on the Google Doc. So you'll be able to take that Google Doc and look at it and watch the webinar if you want to figure out how to create a discussion on MyConnect. But I just want to talk in general. Teach Netiquette first. Teach students how to participate in these academic discussions. They don't know how to do academic online stuff. They are really great at communicating with each other informally, but they have not had the chance to have academic conversations online. So teach that netiquette first. If you look at the Google Doc, there are a couple of videos. Whether they're the best videos or not, I don't know. I put them on there a couple of years ago and probably need to go back and look at them. But they do, we do a discussion right after the students watch those videos, and they are not graded on the content of their discussion. They're graded on whether they use the netiquette on there. So that's a key if you want your discussions to go well. The first year I taught my online class, I did not do this. And then I had to cringe every time somebody didn't capitalize I or used a informal acronym, the LOL and the emojis in there. So I would encourage you to do that step before you start throwing content in. Also start with low stakes topics. Do not throw in figuring out what the period of a sine curve is first. Start with the low stakes topics. Start with like, oh, which one doesn't belong? Or even something not academic, like what is the most interesting thing that's happened at home? Or what do you see out your window? You know, something like that. So something low stakes, something that's not going to, because really you want them to focus on the netiquette. Include responding to others as an expectation. So if you want to truly create a collaborative classroom, you have to have that expectation that they're going to respond to other people. If not, it's just a conversation between you and the students, and it's a lot less collaborative than you would like it to be. So here's an example, and notice this is October, so they had their practice discussion first, but this is something that just sort of shows what you can do in a discussion. It can be a summary, it can be an intro. I like to use them as intros, like launches to the lesson as well, to try and get some background knowledge. You can choose whether you want them to see other students' responses first or after they post, so decide what the purpose of your discussion is. But here's an example. This is when students are really looking at the slope ratio related to tangent. And so then here's an example student response. And they talk about it, and they did a pretty good job. They didn't explain completely all of their thinking when they're talking about the angle change. And especially when they've got this where the slope ratio is more than 1, then the angle must be more. So they just made that claim without any evidence. And you can see the other students will call them on that. I completely agree with your answer. I feel explaining why something is true is better than directly stating it. And I didn't like search for these exemplars. These are how my students have learned to talk through their discussions. So they respond back and forth to each other pretty well, and it very much is a collaborative classroom by October. It takes them a little while to get used to that. So expect a learning curve for your students. So back to the ideal classroom, students as problem solvers. So they're the ones that are initially writing down their thinking, students collaborating, so that expectation that they go back and forth, teachers facilitating learning. So you can see all of their discussions on there. Summarize, you can definitely use discussions for summarizing something or closure. And that check for understanding is really nice when they have to write out their thinking. And you can see all of those pretty easily online, much more so actually than in a classroom setting. So that check for understanding and you knowing where students are, you'll find you have a pretty good idea as you become familiar with some of the online tools. Collaborative hyperdocs. This is one of my favorite things that I discovered, to let students create things together. This is an example of a Google Doc they had to start off with. They're looking at different patterns and their rug patterns. So you can kind of see this is their personal one right here. And so they're looking at these figures, and then we'll have different figures to look at to see how they're growing and changing, and how the graphs and tables relate. So here, after they've done the notice and wonder, they go on to here and they click on, these are divided into 2 groups. Depending on how many students I have in a class, I divide them into separate ones, so they have a little bit less to look over. And so this is an example of a hyperdoc. Now, all of them can edit this. So this is a Google Doc where everybody can edit and they can add things in here. So I have all the different kinds of rugs listed on the left. They write their name on here, so I can kind of see at a glance. And they had to draw rugs 4 and 5 using a digital tool. And they had to use Desmos for a graph and a table, so they linked them both here. And then they had to describe over here. And not only that, but they also commented on each other's. So they could just highlight that and comment on each other's. And then they could also see how everybody else is answering this question. So it's like a table talk, like if you divide it, it's like a jigsaw. So you do this one, you do this one, you do this one. And so they can look at each other's responses on here. So hyperdocs are pretty powerful for collaboration. Here's how you do that. When you're sharing something, and it can be a Google Doc, or it can be a drawing, or it can be a slideshow, you just click the shareable link, and then you're gonna make sure you click this here where anybody can comment or view, and you wanna change it to anyone can edit. Anyone in Poway can edit. So I always make them go through their MyPlan account, because I don't want any weird emails coming up on there that I don't know who it is. So they always have to go through their Poway account so that I can tell who's doing what. And then just click done. Okay, so that was a lot. Any questions about that so far? You'll find wait time online is really hard too. Okay. All right, so here's an example of a Google Slides that you can do the same thing. And so each of the students had a slide where they created 2 independent events, and then they had to answer each other's on there. So I gave them a template to work with, and then they had to put that in there and answer it. So it looks kind of like this. Name of the person creating the problem. Here's the problem that they wrote that description, and then the name of the solver. And so then they had to talk about it on there. So this is an example of using Google Slides as like a collaborative hyperdoc for students to link to it. And again, if this is overwhelming to you right now, don't worry about it. You'll be ready for this eventually, but if it's overwhelming, just kind of keep it in the back of your mind. You're thinking about how to get kids to collaborate. Google Drawing. If you want to make a Google Drawing, it's kind of like our whiteboard function that we have on Zoom. But if you don't want to use Zoom, but you want students to write on the same drawing or comment on each other's drawings, you can just make a Google Drawing and you can copy and paste images in there. And I use that a lot if I want to have students illustrate drawings. So you just go on the left where you have where you usually make a Google Doc, and just click more and then click Google Drawings. And then the same thing with the share settings. You have to change the share settings. So here's an example of one of our discussions where I have a Google Drawing where students can edit and talk about it. And so they're trying to find the area of a regular hexagon, and they have to illustrate their thinking. And so this person actually typed stuff in here and then explained how they found the area of a regular hexagon. And then they had to compare their method to somebody else's method. And so that was part of the instructions. And so you can see, I agree with your explanation. We both arrived at the same answer, but we use different methods. So this is just one way they can talk to each other, and this can be asynchronous, which is nice in between. If we have our meetings all online with students, it's nice that they have the opportunity to be able to answer anytime they want. And I have my settings set that I can see when they comment on each other's. So I really watch those comments. They come right in my email, so I can kind of read through them before I have to go through this whole Google Doc. Ideal classroom. Students as problem solvers, students collaborating, teachers facilitating, which allows us to do that with the Google Doc, and then summarize. So I haven't really used Google HyperDocs for summarizing, but I'm sure that you could. And I'm sure some of you will come up with wonderful ways to do that and hopefully share them with me. Checks for understanding, they're definitely good for that. So you can look through and really check your students, especially if they submit them on MyConnect, because or Google Classroom, because you can just click right through them. So it's a lot easier actually than grading papers, because you know what to look for, and they have to type things in, so it's often a lot neater than looking through notebooks. So it's pretty good for that. Desmos, my very favorite, and I'm getting better at it because I have more time to play with it now. Desmos does have collaborative aspects. Two things we're going to talk about today. There are others, but activity builders and polygraphs. Now, the activity builders are the ones I've been sending you in those optional enrichment ones. I think all of them are actually activity builders. And activity builders can be synchronous and asynchronous. If you don't know, this is like online terminology. Synchronous means everybody's all together at one time, like you have a lecture. Asynchronous is different times. So students are responding to things at different times. Activity builders can be done synchronous or asynchronous, depending on what your goal is. Polygraphs have to be done synchronous. However, hand. Arlene has a hand raised. Yes, Arlene. Where are you? I can't see you. Question? Arlene, are you there?
Okay, sorry. I'm sometimes embarrassed to ask because it just shows how much I don't know. So I'm very computer illiterate, but this is back when we were doing Google Docs. I don't know, how do you create a Google Doc?
Oh, okay. So you just go into your, go to My Plan, and then you click the Google Apps, I think it's called. You click that, and then just go off to the right-hand side. I will go into that and show you that right now. Okay, so let's see. So right here, you click Google Apps. It'll bring you into your Google Drive, and then you just click New.
Okay.
And then you can get a doc, a sheet, which is like Excel, slides, which is like PowerPoint, and then the more button, you can get things. And if you've added some apps on here, you can get those too. You can actually create a website now right from there, which is kind of nice. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
then Judy, you had a question. How do you put an activity builder into a Zoom meeting? Okay, yeah. So you can put that right into the Zoom meeting. You can just go through and navigate. Let me go back to this. You can go through it and just post it on there for the students to do. And then what I am learning about, what works best is in a Zoom meeting, just have them go to the activity builder for a little while, paste them, and then pull them all back. So let them have the activity builder on a different screen and have them be answering to wherever you've decided is the point where you all want to bring them back together. And then say, okay, everybody, come back to the Zoom screen. I want to talk about some of the things you put in there. So I'm getting better at that, but I'm still not great at that. So you might want to start that activity builder without doing it all together. Although you could try it. I did. So it was a little shaky, but you can definitely do that in a Zoom meeting.
So it sounds like you're saying they're in the Zoom meeting, but on their computer, they go to the activity builder and they work on it there?
Yeah, so if they have two windows open, they open the Zoom one and then they also open the activity builder one. And so they work on that activity builder until you decide, okay, at this point, we need to all come back together and share thinking. And so then you, as the teacher in the Desmos, you've taken pictures, snapshots of it, or you're showing a certain screen and you're saying, hey, this is what we've all decided here. Let's look at these 3 different ways of representing it.
Okay,
yeah, 2
so
separate windows. The applications don't embed in each other. No, they don't embed in each other, but if you screen share, yours is what they're seeing. So when you pull them back, you're showing them the display of the snapshots. Thank you for your question.
Tracy, could you also tell, this is probably a very juvenile question, but when you create a doc in Google,
yes,
what I'm having trouble with is finding the easiest way to put that doc on Canvas in an assignment.
Yeah, so you just share. So you go over to it just like this. You click share. So this is our collaborative math classroom Google Doc. You click share. And then you click who has access. And then this link right here, this link is sharing on people at Poway District. So I like to leave it like that because I know what's happening then. And you just click this copy button. And then when you go on to Canvas, you can put it on your calendar. That's what I usually do it with calendar. Or you can do it with announcements. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for your questions. Oh, let's not apologize for not knowing things, please, because I don't know things either. So let's all kind of just be in this space together. Don't be embarrassed to ask anything because we might as well ask, right? So don't worry about not knowing something. We will not judge you. Right, everybody?
See, the bit.ly address you gave us, will that hook to that Google Doc you just shared?
Yes, and then I will send it out to you all after the meeting as well, but that will go right to the Google Doc that I shared, yes. Other questions? Okay. Oops. So polygraphs, those are synchronous. You don't have to be on Zoom. Oh, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a quick one. When you did Google Drawing,
yes.
Do you have a suggestion or a preference on, say, Google Drawings versus, say, Jamboard or whiteboard that Zoom provides to do drawings live for the kids?
The good thing about Google Drawing is you know who does everything. So that's what I like about both Desmos and I like about Google Drawing is you can tell who drew what, and you can't on Zoom. So I think it depends on what kind of feeling you get about your class, but I know that it's hard to tell, like who did the drawing on the whiteboard on Zoom. And you can tell on the Google Drawing. You can see the history of it, which I like that. Okay. Other questions? All right, so polygraphs are synchronous. You don't have to be on Zoom to do the polygraphs with your students. They can actually do them at the same time. And it's like a guess who game. So I have a video that'll kind of explain it a little bit better than I can. And then I have one that we can play with after if we've got some time. So let's talk first about activity builders. And those are the ones that are in the enrichment things that I've been sending you where it says Desmos activity. So these are the activity builders. You can just go to teacher.desmos.com and get there anyway on there. And then on the link, you'll see some of the newest collections. So Desmos has been working really hard during this time about having activities for students to do by grade level. So they've got some really great ones that work well for distance learning. And so on the Google Doc, there's a link to some of those activities. So some of the ways students can collaborate, this one is not a collaboration slide, but it's just letting them know it's on inequalities. And so pick one more number. They're trying to figure out what an inequality actually means with this. And then you can see right here, this is where the collaboration starts. They, first of all, their names are mathematicians. And one of the things that the creator of Desmos said, the most off-task behavior when you're doing one of these Desmos assignments is they look up themselves. They're like, oh, that's interesting. And they'll look themselves up on Google, which is kind of cool. So this makes them anonymous, but you can always tell who it is. So you can go back and change that and tell who is who. But I just put this on here. This is actually from the activity builders that I sent out to all of you. And if you didn't make your own copy, students went into mine and worked it. So this is actually from one of those. And so these responses here will also come out to, it'll populate it to students so they can see what other students were saying about this slide. And then again, so they're being able to see what other students are saying. This is the teacher screen, but their screen populates these as well. So they're collaborating in that way. And again, so same sort of thing. How are they different? How are they the same? And you can check really easily about doing some formative assessment here, but that's not what this is about. That's 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks from now, I don't know. But so this kind of gives you an idea what they can see. Now, one of the things that's new about Desmos that I love so much is now you can give feedback to students on there. So while this isn't the collaboration part, this is part of the facilitation. So the way you do that, if you're on your teacher.desmos screen, you click your name and your name will bring up these settings down here so you can see things about it. Then you just click Desmos Labs and then you want to turn on the written feedback. And that allows you to give feedback to students. And the way that looks, this is part of the card sort, which is in that same activity, is you find the person that you want to give feedback to, like this person didn't finish the card sort. And then you can click this button up here that's like a little quote thing where it says lesson feedback. You can also use option F key to just give that feedback right away without even clicking that button if you like shortcuts. And then you can type it in and send it to them. Now, the thing is the students do have to go back and look at their feedback. It doesn't like populate it to their email or anything like it does on Canvas when you're doing discussions and you respond. And so it will give them the feedback, but they have to go back and take a look at that. So that would have to be an expectation if you're going to use that for feedback. Okay, questions on activity builders? Okay, polygraphs. Polygraphs are so fun. And I've seen a couple of people on Twitter where they'll announce they're doing a polygraph from all across the United States. And they'll say, okay, so sixth graders, we're all going to get together and do this polygraph. And they'll run this polygraph, which is a giant game, but mathy game. And you can run that all at one time. So it's like the game Guess Who. So here's a video that kind of explains it better than I could explain it. Oh.
We're going to kick things off with
Can you hear it?
a game that most of us probably played as kids. So think back to your childhood days playing Guess Who, where you would pick a person was important to you. And then your partner had to try to guess which person you chose. They asked specific questions about their features. You answered yes or no based on what was true. And they eliminated options based on your answers. What you're watching right now is a digital version of this, where we're asking yes or no questions, answering a partner's questions, and using these answers to narrow it down to a specific person. And Desmos has created a version of this that can be used in any mathematics classroom. And let's not forget, we played this game for a reason as kids. There were key skills that we gained from it. We had to identify key features, we had to have a detailed analysis of distinguishing characteristics, and we had to develop questions with purpose. The activity is called a polygraph, and we're going to look at how to use it in your classroom. We're going to start by going to teacher.desmos.com. This is your homepage for all Desmos activities as a teacher. And if you haven't already created an account, you want to, or you can sign in, and there will be all your options. So here we can search, and there's a bunch of different activities that pop up. I'm going to click on polygraph, and you can see just how many there are to choose from. Ones that other teachers have created, or ones created by Desmos. You can also search more specifically if there's a particular topic that you're learning and you'd like to try this with. In this case, I chose rational functions. Notice we've got one from Desmos and two from the community. So I'm going to choose one of the ones from the community. That means a teacher created it. And there's a lot of information accessible here. So you have a description. You can see the graphs that are in it. And then if you click Learn More, you can see what Polygraph is all about, how it's played, and the different experiences. So I'm going to hit Create a Class Code. And that's going to generate a class code for me. You'll want to create a different class code for each period that you run this. You can hit View Dashboard, and that will bring you to the screen that tells your students how to access this. So they'll type in that code at that link. You can also copy and paste this link and put it as a link on your website or send it to your students in some other way. But let's see how to access it with the code. So they'll go to student.desmos.com, and then they'll enter in that class code that you can display up on the board. They'll hit Join.
And it isn't case sensitive.
Their main login screen. They don't need to have an account to do this, but if they do, they can sign in. And then here they're going to type in their name. And I always tell them real names so that I know who they are.
I have them sign in with Google.
This is going to bring them to that practice screen we did at the beginning of the session, but we can skip that because we've already gone through it. So this will connect them to a partner automatically. And that partner is going to be someone else in their session, so typically another student in the class. So once they select a graph, then their partner has to try to decide what question to ask. So let's look at it from the other partner's perspective. So they're going to see this kind of screen, and it's going to say your challenge to figure out what the other person's graph is. And they can only ask yes or no questions here. So this is a great time to emphasize mathematical vocabulary and terminology. In this case, I asked my first question about how many vertical asymptotes occurred, making sure that it was a yes or no question. Once they have that typed, they can hit send, and that question now gets sent to the first partner, and they're asked to wait until it's answered. So the first partner will be given the option yes, no, or I don't know. So if the question's not clear enough, that's a really good indication to that student. In this case, I said yes, because it does have more than one. And that student will see their partner's response. So now their job is to eliminate graphs based on their partner's response. Once they eliminate the ones they know are not correct, they're going to hit Eliminate Selected, and then they can start on their next question. And so the game sort of runs itself at that point. The students go back and forth, and they're going to keep questioning yes or no questions until they finally narrow it down to just one option, and Desmos will let them know, hey, you found it. Nice work. From there, students are asked a series of questions.
Okay, so you kind of get the idea of how that works. Any questions about that? Students love this, by the way. So one of the people I follow on Twitter was talking about doing this with her students, and she ended the session, and they said, "Can you leave the game on?" Because they wanted to keep playing it. So it's a nice way for them to connect with each other, and then you can go back and see what those questions are. And what I have included in the Google Doc, that bit.ly link down there, is a way that if you're doing this where you're not on with them at that exact time, that you can make like a video that talks about what you saw, like what kinds of things you saw that students were doing. So it's almost like a summarizing of what you've seen students do, which I thought was an interesting way to do a Desmos activity or a polygraph. If you didn't want to do that in real time. So I think that that's an interesting way of doing that. I have not done that, but I think it was a great idea. So I put that in there for you to see. So again, the ideal classroom, students as problem solvers, which Desmos definitely tries to do. There are definitely Desmos activities that do not follow that. Remember, because teachers can create them. So there are procedural practice Desmos activities. So as you choose them, keep in mind that we want to create students as problem solvers, and that polygraph activity is really good for building vocabulary and for introducing the need for vocabulary. Students collaborating, you definitely see that on polygraph, and you see that on the Desmos activities. And the teacher facilitating. This is actually really easy to facilitate a Desmos activity because students thinking is apparent. Like you can see it right there all on one screen, which is much easier than looking at notebooks. Summarizing, and again, bringing students together either by video or on Zoom or even on like a Google Doc to talk about what students have thought, or even in combining this with one of the discussions. So sometimes I'll combine a Desmos activity and have them answer in a discussion. Checks for understanding, again, really nice a way that Desmos does this. Flipgrid is the last one. And so Flipgrid is something I didn't start using until about the 3rd year of my online class. And I love it because it makes student thinking very, very apparent. Even if they would write something and I think they understand, listening to them speak, I really know whether they understood something or not. So their writing can look wonderful. And if I don't listen to it with sound, I'm like, yeah, that kid gets it. But then they say something like x to the 7th is x plus x plus x plus x plus x. And it does make you cringe a little bit sometimes, but it also makes you very aware that sometimes what students write is not necessarily what's in their brain. So you get the full understanding of what students know. So there is a Flipgrid way to do Flipgrid. We're not going to talk about how to do Flipgrid right now. You might not be ready for that or want that, but there is a link in the Google Docs so that you can do that. The grids are like classes. So that's something that took me a little while to figure out. The grids are not topics, they're classes. So you'll want to name them period 1, integrated 3, or whatever. It's where students make their own videos to explain topics. So you create a topic. They and you can see each other's videos and comment on them. And it's really fun to see your students all talking about math and trying to explain it to each other. And they really like watching each other's videos too. There's a lot of positive buzz going around as far as students being able to collaborate and see each other now on Flipgrid. So that's all over Twitter right now. Students are very happy about that, and teachers are very happy that students are able to connect. So that's Flipgrid. Here's an example of one of my Flipgrids. They have to create an expression that factors into 3 factors, and I gave them an example and then record a video. Then they have to solve each other's too. So, and then comment. So this is from my online class. They did a very good job with that. And I linked one of the videos to the Google Docs so you could see what that looked like when a student was explaining their thinking. This is what your grid looks like. You can see who's viewing over here. You can allow likes. I usually take that off just because I don't want students to feel bad if they didn't get a lot of likes. So that's what yours looks like. Again, Flipgrid, the ideal classroom, it really helps with that. Students as problem solvers, they're explaining their thinking, they're collaborating because they're watching each other, even if it's not at the same time. And teachers are facilitating learning. Summarize, it's a great summary. So having them summarize a lesson with Flipgrid is a great way. And then you can definitely check for understanding, probably better than anything you can do in a classroom because you can listen to students in different times. You actually get to hear them if you want to. So eventually, in many, many months, we are going to be hitting this marathon finish line of distance learning. And I hope that by then you have gone slowly along the way, one foot in front of the other, and that we've figured out how to make our classrooms much like the ideal classroom virtually as we did, or maybe even in some ways better than we did in our regular classrooms. So that's that's one of the things that I'm hopeful about, that we can learn a few more tools that maybe we can even use in our classrooms when we return. So that's our finish line. And then if you would like to, I have Polygraph if you want to try Polygraph, or we can do questions. So whatever, it looks like we're not going to be able to break up into content groups. We don't have so many people today. So we can do questions, or I'm open, actually. Let me look at the chat because I forgot about it for a while. So sorry. Let's see. When they sign in, yeah, when they sign in with Google, it populates their real name. That's why I have them sign in with Google. Okay.
One thing about signing in the Flipgrid, you got to use email, and don't forget you need the STU.
Yeah.
So
if you,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go. You go, Casey.
No.
No, that was my point. Is don't forget the STU so the students can do it.
Yes, and don't forget your own without the STU, or else you can't get in and see it. So on the little video, it has that on there. It tells you what to use. Okay. Yeah. Jamie, question?
I was going to say I just tried out Flipgrid in math and had the students find examples of complementary and supplementary angles in their home, and they loved it. And so, but I'm curious to try it for more of like the summary portion of things. But I did have a question, and I don't know if you can answer it now or if it's a different time, but on some sort of like virtual whiteboard. So like if we are wanting to like show our students how to do something, would you just recommend Google Drawing for that? Or have you found another space for some sort of virtual whiteboard?
So if it's, go ahead, Lindsay. Lindsay can maybe answer. Here, I'll unmute you. Go ahead. I unmuted you.
Yeah, okay. I've been using Edu Creations, and I'll type it in the, I typed it in the chat, but it's a free website. It allows you to record yourself on a whiteboard. And the cool thing about this site is that when you post a video, it allows you to see how much each student has watched the video. So it allows you to keep track. Are the students watching the video? Are they not? But it actually shows the specific percent of what they've watched of the videos that you've posted.
I saw something this morning on viewership of videos, and it has this, here, I'll stop sharing my screen. It has this graph, and it shows like over time how many people like quit watching the video after like 2 minutes or something like that. So they said, keep that in mind when you assign videos to students. They'll watch maybe 2 minutes of it, and then they'll quit watching it.
Yeah.
Hey, Jamie, did that answer your question?
A little bit. I tried Edu Creations, but I thought you had to pay for it, so I'll look back into it.
No, they've done, they have a free, they're doing it free right now because of COVID.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I've tried to like get real, it feels very janky, but like